Welcome everyone, and welcome to a session that is geared to happy children. It's geared to creating happy, joyful children. I always start my sessions on children with one admission, and that is everything that I have learned today and everything that I am today is entirely because of the very many mistakes that I made as a parent and that I made as a teacher. I was a teacher of 32 years, taught at only one school, loved every moment of it, but just knew when the energies of the school and myself didn't align anymore and that I had to take another path. But every single child of mine in those 32 years, plus my own two children, they have been the teachers. They have been my teachers. They have taught me where I went right and they have taught me where I went wrong. Yes, there are times when I sit back and think of those mistakes. And of course, I wish I hadn't committed them, but I'm also grateful for those mistakes because it helped me to change. And today, when I talk at length to parents and to teachers in forums like these, it's because I am eager to ensure that young parents, young teachers do not commit the same mistakes that I did, and that your relationship with your children, both at school and at home, is a wonderful one. In spite of the mistakes that I committed, there is an amazing bond between almost every single ex-student of mine. And my birthdays and Teachers' Day is just filled with loving messages. And that is, thank you, Sonali. I love you too. So it's not about not making mistakes, friends. It's about making mistakes and recognizing the mistakes we have made and doing everything we possibly can to see that we do not repeat those mistakes. We are all human beings and we will trip up from time to time. We will lose our tempers, we will get frustrated, we will get frazzled, we will react. And that's okay. It's not the reaction that is so important. What is important is recognizing that we've reacted and doing something to transform, to reform, to make amends. So let's understand why children use behavior. When we talk of behavior, we just automatically, our mind goes to bad behavior. That's really not true. Yes, there are children who behave badly more often, let us say, than someone else. But genuinely, every child behaves badly from time to time. It's their birthright. I was a very difficult child. I was a very difficult teenager. So I know the angst that creates the bad behavior. I know what goes on within the child to create that bad behavior. So a child uses the behavior, whatever is the pattern, in order to communicate something to us. When the child is unable to communicate something to us verbally, then the child resorts to a behavior pattern. So why is it that the child does not communicate verbally? One is the child may not be able to communicate verbally. So, for example, a young toddler will not know the right words to explain to his mom or his dad what his or her frustration is. If there is a physically challenged child, that child may not be able to communicate verbally. What is more important, though, is the lack of permission given to children to communicate. As parents, as teachers, we believe that we are encouraging them to speak. And I have seen that happen. I have seen that happen in school. I have seen that happen with my own clients who come here for sessions with their children. Verbally, the adult is giving the child the permission to verbalize their feelings, their frustrations, their angers. But there is a subtle energy or a tone of voice that the child picks up, which warns the child, ignore the words of the adult. The adult is saying, yes, you can say whatever you want, but actually the adult is not giving me the permission. Let me give you an example. I was seated in the principal's office when another teacher brought in 2 boys into the principal's office. These 2 boys, unfortunately, already had a reputation of being mischievous, of being distracting in class. So it was very easy for the teacher to bring them into the principal's office and complain about them. And it was very easy for the principal to not hear the actual situation on that day, but to make a prejudgment. I could see that one of the boys was attempting to explain himself and the behavior, what happened on that day. He was not referring to anything that he had done or not done in the past. But the teacher who had brought him turned around and very rudely said, "Shut up. Don't interrupt when I'm talking to the principal." The principal, on hearing this, looked at the boy and said, "Go on, what is it that you want to tell me?" But the principal did not say this kindly. She said it with a distinct tone of anger and annoyance that once again these 2 boys were in her office. The boy absolutely shut up and he didn't say one more word, even though he was invited to speak. 2 to 3 days later, when I saw this boy in the corridor in a lunch break, I stopped him and I asked him, "Why did you not explain yourself that day? I could see that you wanted to say something, but you didn't." First of all, he looked at me a little fearfully because he was wondering whether I was coming from some space of punishment for him again, because he had already received punishment from the teacher and the principal. And I encouraged him by saying, "I'm genuinely interested. What stopped you?" And he looked at me and he said, "Miss, I was already told to shut up. And I had gone so many times to the principal's office that I could make out from her face that if I said anything more, I would get an even more severe punishment." That was such a sad statement for me. So I said, "Okay, why don't you tell me what went on that day? I know it's too late. I know I won't really be able to help you anymore. But why don't you tell me what happened?" And when he did, I realized that having been seated for that particular class next to a so-called good student, the teacher automatically assumed, when she heard some talk come from that corner where he was seated, she assumed that he was talking when in fact it was the good student who had been talking. I said nothing. I just thanked him for sharing with me and I walked away, wondering whether I should bring up this subject with the teacher or with the principal. But something within me just guided me and said, drop it. Talk about this at another time. I don't think either of them will be happy to hear what you have to say right now. But this is what we do. We do not give them the permission to verbalize. When we don't give them the permission to verbalize, when they are not respected for what they have to say, when they are put down, when they are shouted at, when they are spoken to rudely and harshly, no child is going to verbalize what he or she really feels. So what do? They have to express their inner feelings in some way. And those inner feelings could be anger, those inner feelings could be frustration, those inner feelings could be resentment. What do? They act out, which means they use a behavior pattern that ironically goes against them. This becomes a vicious cycle. They are saying something in an unspoken way, but adults are coming from their own fragile egos. Adults are coming from prejudgment. Adults are coming from, this child is always like this. So they never get an opportunity to speak. They continue to act out. That just reaffirms in the adult that this child is bad. That's the one vow that we must take today, here and now, this minute before we move any further. We must vow to stop using this word bad to describe any child, whether it's your own or someone else's. There is no bad child. Yes, there are bad behavior patterns. And today we are gathered to understand those patterns so that you will appreciate why those patterns are coming up, and you will be able to see that actually your child is not a bad child. So let's start with something that in the last few days I have received so many messages about, and that is tantrums. Tantrums start at a very young age, right? Here is the classic example of a toddler not knowing how to verbalize and therefore resorting to shouting, screaming, crying loudly, throwing his hands and legs about, because he doesn't know, she doesn't know how to express what he or she is feeling inside, doesn't know how to express the needs of that inner child. The problem is when tantrums are not addressed at that age, because the parent erroneously believes, oh, this one is a very young child, they'll grow out of it. So we continue to believe that the child will grow out of the tantrums phase, but more often than not, these tantrums do not end, and they actually move into a space of aggression. We as adults have to recognize that a tantrum is also an aggressive way of expressing what the child needs or feels. But the tantrum comes from only one place. The child throws a tantrum in order to get your attention. Every single child, whether 2 years or 6 years, every single child needs attention. That is a basic human need. You and I may be well over 40 now, but we still have that need for someone else's attention. Yes, we would like positive attention, but when that does not come to us for whatever reason, the child begins to seek negative attention. Because for the child, any attention is better than no attention. The best age to deal with tantrums is when the child is in a pre-primary or in the very early primary years of school. Both parents and teachers have to ensure that they are following the same pattern, the same response of dealing with tantrums. I'm constantly surprised why schools do not have regular, compulsory training sessions for parents. Maybe they don't because the teachers themselves are not following those truths. One of the best ways of dealing with tantrums is known as selective ignoring. Ignore the tantrum. It will make sense to you when I tell you why. There is only one reason why a child throws tantrum at any age, and that is to get your attention. If they are seeking your attention in a manner which is not conducive to harmony, to well-being of the child and to you, ignore that tantrum. Teachers and parents, I'm repeating this. Please do not give that excuse to me. How can we ignore a tantrum when there are 30 other children in the class? You are an adult. Come on, find positive ways of doing this. You know your child, you know your children in your class better than anyone else. You know what will work. Yes, there will be things that you do which will not work. Don't give up. Persevere. You will find the right method. And please understand, one method will not work for all. But you have to be consistent, selective ignoring. And when I say consistent, I don't only mean the parents and I don't only mean the teachers in the school. I mean every single member of the family. Now, this is where a large number of parents who come to me will complain that, we are following everything that you are asking us to do, but my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my great-grandmother-in-law, someone or the other is there in the home who will not be on board. This is where it is very, very important for the parents to take those elderly people who are coming out of love and concern, but who do not understand what selective ignoring is. take them to a therapist, take them to the teacher at school who can better explain objectively what selective ignoring is and why it works. Now, selective ignoring does not mean pushing the child away, does not mean talking to X and being rude to Y and shunning the child. Oh no, that's not selective ignoring, that's insulting, that's humiliating. And I will never, ever be the one to say that insult or humiliate the child. Do you like being insulted? Do you like being humiliated? And if your answer is no, your child deserves the same respect that you would like to receive. So what does selective ignoring mean? I used to do this quite regularly in school, not for tantrumy children because I used to teach the higher classes, but for those who were the distractors in class. And they would want to elbow someone and chat with someone. The best thing I would do is move their places. So never keep two children who have the same behavior patterns together. So the so-called good children and the so-called bad children were never kept together by me. It would be one and the other. Now that distracted child is trying to talk to the child who wants to pay attention. That child will ignore the one who's talking. As a teacher, I have to do nothing. I would not even look in that direction, because looking in that direction means I am giving that child the recognition of negative attention that the child is seeking. So don't even look in that direction. I would continue on with my lesson. If that pattern was continuing, I would instantly shift to another way. And this is known as positive direction. It's taking the energy of the child and redirecting it in a positive manner. So I have realized, let us say, selective ignoring hasn't worked. If it hasn't worked, I shift to positive redirection of energy. So I would tell that child, these 5 sentences I'd like you to write on the board. You know that chalk irritates me. Could you please write that on the board? The child might take 3, 4, 5 minutes to write that. I have already redirected that pent-up energy in a positive direction. I continue teaching. And while the child is writing, I use what the child is writing as part of my class, as part of my lesson. And this is very important. The child must not feel that I am making him do some useless exercise. When the child has finished writing those 5 sentences, I would tell the child, please just remain there, because I'm sure something else will click in my memory bank and I'll want you to write that down. So the child will remain alert. Now, what have I done? I have the child's attention in a very positive manner, which is exactly what the child wants, which is exactly what I want as the adult. You can do the same at home. Redirect the energy if selective ignoring doesn't work. Now, when does selective ignoring not work? And this is more specific for parents rather than teachers, although it does also affect the teachers partially. Selective ignoring needs one very, very, very important condition. And that is, it needs constant positive reinforcement. When there is consistent positive reinforcement, those few times when you choose selective ignoring, that child will want you to positively reinforce him or her again. Because you've already habituated the child to receiving positive reinforcement. You see, guys, if you are constantly ignoring the child, if you are constantly prejudging the child, that child will not seek your positive reinforcement, will in fact up the bad behavior. Every time you selectively ignore the child, that child will up the bad behavior. So, what do I mean by positive reinforcement? Positive reinforcement has one pillar, and that is praise. Find even the smallest thing to praise your child. Now, there is a difference between praise and going overboard and making your child believe that he is the be-all and end-all of the universe. So you as a parent need to know where to draw the line. Don't praise in a manner where you are enhancing boastfulness or vanity, but praise with truth. For example, let's say your child is right now at home and you teach your young child of 6 years how to cut and peel a mango. When the child does that, even if it's not perfect, look at the child and say, that was well done, but you know what I'd do differently next time? Maybe if you cut it in this manner, see, the skin is so much thinner then, rather than throwing away so much of the mango. This is positive reinforcement, where you praise, but do not overpraise. Now, if the child is habitually, parents and teachers hear this, if the child is habitually being praised, when you resort to selective ignoring, that child will realize instantly. Please remember, children are very, very smart. Don't think of them as dumb. That child will realize immediately that I'm not getting that attention that my parent or my teacher generally gives me. Once that tantrum is over, hold the child, but you will not hold the child till the tantrum is over. Be consistent. Don't be embarrassed that, oh my God, my child is throwing this mother of a tantrum and it's gone on for 10 minutes. What will people think of me as the mother? Guys, this is not about you. It's about the child. Don't bring your fragile egos into it. I realized much later that the mistakes I made as a parent and as a teacher were coming out of the fragility of my ego. So don't make that mistake. It's not about you. It's about the child. So be consistent. If you are resorting to selective ignoring during the tantrum, ignore till the tantrum is over. When the tantrum is over, and sometimes it takes all of 2 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, really the tantrum doesn't go on much longer. Do not leave the child alone while the child is throwing a tantrum. Be there with the child. Pick up a book to read, do some work, peel some fruits. Show a completely calm exterior. Don't shun the child. Don't push the child. Do not shout at the child. When you shout at the child, you've already lost the battle and the child has won. Please remember that. You think that as an adult you're shouting and screaming and that you're winning. You're not. You've already lost the battle. You've already shown that as an adult you have failed. And the child's respect for you will crash. So no hitting, no shouting, no screaming. Sit there calmly, hum a little song, chant something in your mind so that it keeps you calm. I have found that just chanting within myself, Om Shanti, works on two fronts. It calms me down, but the energies of that Om Shanti calms the child down. I do that even when my dogs are throwing a tantrum. I don't interfere. Let the tantrum spend itself. I am just chanting Om Shanti. As soon as the tantrum is over, hold the child immediately. Embrace the child. If you find that the child takes that as permission to start the tantrum again, withdraw and continue on again with your activity. Once you have embraced the child, now comes the second part. Redirect the energy of the child into a positive direction. So in those few minutes, while you are doing whatever it is that you're doing, waiting for the child to calm down, start thinking of what you will do in the next 10 minutes to redirect the child's energy. Already have a plan in action. So if you know that your child loves to cook, take the child into the kitchen with you and say, come on, today I'll show you how to make rice. No child is young enough, is too young to not be taught how to cook. You can teach a child a lot of things to cook without the stove. You can buy knives that are meant for children that will not cut their hands. So there's all of that. If your child likes something with craft, already have that activity. Pick up a book and start reading to the child. Tell the child, would you like to learn something new as a dance? I'll show you how to dance. Whatever you know best and whatever will help the child, what the child will enjoy, but redirect the energy. Once that is over and done, and a few hours have passed, the child is now happy again, the child is doing its own thing, the child is happy with you. Sit down with the child and explain, do you know why I ignored your tantrum? It's not because I don't love you. In fact, I love you dearly. You're very precious to me. I recognize how amazing you are. And that tantrum was not making you look or behave in the way that an amazing child like you would generally behave. So I just chose to ignore you because I know you and I know how amazing you really are. Every parent can do this and every teacher can do this. All it needs is willingness. You know, teachers are so concerned about running from class to class to class, teaching some plan that they have made, correcting their books, writing horrible comments at the end of every exercise, that they do not look at the child as a child. They are looking at children as a job. And they know that their bonuses and their increments depend on them doing a good job. So those damned children better behave. That is where a teacher comes from. And where does a parent come from? I want everyone. I want my in-laws. I want my own parents. I want my friends. I want everyone to know what a fabulous mother I am, what a great dad I am. So you bloody well behave yourself. We place our demands on that child. Will the child not throw a tantrum? When demands are placed upon you, do you not throw a tantrum in your own way? You don't shout and scream, hopefully not as an adult. You don't throw your hands and legs around, but you are throwing a tantrum. So do not place your demands on the tender shoulders of a child. Allow the child to be a child. It's their right. They don't have to validate who you are. We are expecting our children to make us feel good, to make us look good. No, if you want to feel good, you are an adult. Go find the way to make yourself feel good. If you want to look good, go on and learn something and make yourself look good. But this is not a demand that you make upon your child. The reason for a tantrum is very often, as teachers, as parents, we have learned to overcompensate. If I don't feel that I have enough time to be with my child, as soon as my child asks for a new toy, it will be given to the child immediately. This instant gratification is a very, very important cause of a tantrum. Because on that particular day, when you are not going to instantly gratify, or you're not going to gratify the demand at all, the child has been taught, has been conditioned by you to believe that whatever the child demands, the child will get. Now suddenly you up it and say no. Naturally, the child is going to throw a tantrum. So right from the beginning, and this is for all the young, really young mothers out there, delay gratification. If the child wants to go and see a movie, and if that movie is going to be there for another 4 days, you don't have to take the child today or tomorrow. Tell the child we'll go day after tomorrow. No, I want to go today. I'm so sorry, but today I have already this scheduled. I can't shift. The child is going to throw a tantrum. Here is your opportunity to teach your child responsibility. I've already committed to another plan. Not continuing with that plan and shifting is very irresponsible. I shall take you day after tomorrow. So you have to learn how to delay gratification. Now, when I say delay gratification, I don't mean give it to the child after 3 months. No. Delay it by a day. Delay it by 2 days. But don't make that child get into the habit of instant gratification. I have adults who come to me as sessions. They have been so used to getting everything instantly by their parents that they expect the same in their in-laws' home, which is not possible. And they throw a mother of a tantrum. Why does my husband not give me what I want immediately? I told him to take me for a weekend holiday and he said we'll go next month. If this adult as a child had been taught delayed gratification, there would have been no ugly scenes, tantrums as an adult. So remember, tantrums need an audience. The choice is up to you as an adult. Are you going to be that audience or are you not? It will not work instantly. After my last session on parenting with Jamnabai Narsi School, I had so many asking me questions, and I'd answer them and they'd turn around and say, so it will work immediately. Come on, guys. Of course it's not going to work immediately. It isn't. It will not work immediately. The child has been used to one pattern from you. You have to shift your pattern and remain consistent with your pattern, the new pattern. If you, as a parent, keep shifting, today I give in to the bad behavior, tomorrow I am selectively ignoring, a third day I am shouting and screaming, the child has no idea of what to expect from you. Unpredictability is very disturbing for a child. A teacher and a parent must be predictable. So be predictable, be consistent in your responses. First, have a conversation about this change, not only with your spouse, but with the rest of the family. If they are resisting you, have the courage, not to be rude, but have the courage to assert that you are the parent and that you are asking for this change and that this change shall be supported by all. You have the right to assert your parenthood. Don't be scared of an in-law. And if that in-law is still resisting, as I've told you, take the in-law to a therapist, to a counselor, to a teacher who can help you. Now let's move to peer pressure. So we are now looking at a different age group. I've moved away from the toddlers and youngsters to a different age group. Peer pressure starts becoming a problem once the child hits puberty and adolescence. Understand that peer pressure is a very normal, very natural process of growth in a human being. Along with the physicality of the child's brain is also developing. In these years, between 12 to 13 and around 20 to 24, this decade, or a little over a decade, is where the brain seeks validation. The brain is evolving and bringing in feelings of, I want to be liked, I want to be approved, I want to belong, I want to fit in. This is a very natural process. So don't knock peer pressure. In fact, positive peer pressure is very, very useful to you as an adult. Because positive peer pressure means that you don't have to do anything to bring your child back onto a positive track. The peers will do it. Now here's an example. When we would go on school trips, and I would know that here are 5 or 6 girls and boys who are definitely going to land up giving me a bit of grief because they are going to do something that is not only going to be wrong for them, but it might encourage others to do the same. So the answer was very simple. You put these same children, you divide the whole group into teams, and you put one of these as the team leader of each team. And what you say is, at the end of each day, every team is going to be given certain points, depending on whether you were on time, whether you were helpful and kind to people, were you rude to anyone, whether it was a teacher or a fellow student. All of these, you bring them down. The winning team at the end of every day will get a prize, but the winning team overall will get positive marks in their project assignments. Every child wants that. Every child wants that. And here you have taken one of those ringleaders and literally given them the role of a team leader. So you are once again diverting the attention, negative direction of energy of a ringleader to a positive direction as a team leader. Now, if anyone in that group does something that will take away their points, the others will ensure that they pull up that child so that their team doesn't suffer. This is the perfect example of positive peer pressure. But negative peer pressure is not something that you are going to be able to save your child from. It exists. And by talking about it, it's not going to go away. By screaming and shouting that teachers are doing nothing about it, it's not going to go away. Parents and teachers together have to combat, again, this element of negative peer pressure, which, as I said, is not going away. You and I faced it, our children are facing it, and their children shall face it. It's a given. It's a given. So how can you and I put up another front? We know that our children are going to face negative peer pressure. If we, as adults, can collectively put up a second front, which can in some way balance out the negative peer pressure, we'll be able to ensure that our children are balanced. There was a time when my son had just started going to college, and I heard him and his sister talking about their people in college knowing where to buy drugs. And my ears pricked up. And I said, let me in on this conversation. I said, do you know where to buy drugs? And he looked at me and said, of course I do, Mom. I'm 18 years old. Of course I know where to buy drugs. And I said, okay, but have you done drugs? Do you do drugs? And he looked at me and said, Mom, do I really look so stupid that I'm going to do drugs because the other guys do it? I smiled to myself. I gave myself a silent pat on the back that somewhere my husband and I had done the right thing of ensuring that my children would know how to combat negative peer pressure. You are not going to save your child from the influence of peer pressure. You have to ensure that you make your child strong enough to resist it. How does one do that? By using the child's natural tendencies. Every child learns by example. They do not learn what you are saying. They are learning what you are doing. I find it extremely amusing when a mother shouts or a teacher shouts. I used to find this very amusing in school. When a teacher shouts and says, shut up and don't argue with me and don't shout at me, I'm a teacher. And her voice is at a decibel level that 3 floors can hear. If you want to tell someone not to shout, then you shouldn't be shouting. If you want to explain to a child that hitting another child is a wrong behavior pattern, then you must not be twisting that child's ear. You have to be what you preach. Yes, we shall slip up. I still slip up. But once I realize I've slipped up, I will immediately go to the children and say, I'm sorry, I slipped up. Why do adults, both parents and teachers, find it so difficult to say, I'm sorry? Don't you see? Some teachers used to tell me, if we tell them we're sorry, they will sit on our heads. No, they will not. They will learn to respect you. And more than that, you will teach them a lesson that we all will make mistakes. At every stage in our lives, we'll make mistakes. But when we realize those mistakes, the mature thing to do is to say, I'm sorry. What a vital lesson to give a child, whether the child is 2 years old or the child is 20 years old. As an adult, you learn to manage your emotions. Then you can give that positive front that I was talking about. They will look at you and they will see your behavior. Peer pressure is nothing else but following what someone else is doing. Yes, it is a human tendency to follow the negative. I am aware of that. I'm not being foolish and blinding myself to that fact. Yes, as children, as teenagers, as young adults, that tendency is even stronger. But don't you see that when that negative front is so strong, the positive front has to be even stronger? Listen to the child. Listen to what the child is saying. Don't constantly talk above the child. Don't constantly talk down to the child. Why don't you sometimes give the child the opportunity to talk? A dinner table is what a lovely opportunity to talk to the child. Instead, unfortunately, what do parents do? At the dinner table, they are using that time to lecture to their children. Your tuition teacher said this, your teacher said this, grandmother said this, your sister said this. What a wasted opportunity. Because at no point in the day is the child ever being heard. When you listen to your child, you will understand where the negative peer pressure is coming from and where the child is struggling. If you gave your daughter the permission to speak and you listened to her, you would realize that she's struggling with the group of girls she is in who are all wearing micro mini skirts, which she is uncomfortable doing, but they're making fun of her because she's not following them, and she is feeling horrible about herself because she is being made fun of. But you would know that if you would listen to her. If she is struggling on her own, the inner frustration, the inner pain, the inner helplessness will make her lash out at you as a teenage girl, and you will not know what has happened to your so-called good child. So make it a point to listen. Teachers in school, these children are children. They are human beings. They are not roll numbers. And they are not the way you get extra brownie points with the management because your children have all done well at the ICSE or whatever. They are children. Find time to talk to them. Don't all the time lecture them. They are done with lecturing. They are done with lecturing. Actually talk with them. Carry on a conversation with them. Respect them. Listen to them. Why not use the breaks? When you see a child seated in class and has not gone out to play, don't just tell the child, why are you sitting here alone? No, the child is not going to tell you that. In fact, go and sit next to the child and say, hey, can I sit here? Would you like to play a game of tic-tac-toe? And while you're playing, while you're doing something, you start distracting the child and make the child start talking. And it's not talking about vital things. You're not asking the child to unburden his soul to you there and then. It's about just having a conversation. Just having a conversation. We somehow seem to have lost that skill to have a conversation. We're either just demanding, we're shouting, or we are keeping quiet, or we are blaming, or we are criticizing. We've lost the art of having a conversation. And because we are always demanding from our children that they do something to make us feel good, we never give them the permission to fail, which is so, so, so important. I remember very clearly when it was Parents' Day and Report Day, the first thing we would do as a family of four is go out and celebrate. Not celebrate brilliant marks, but just celebrate that the child has attended an entire semester and given an exam. Let's acknowledge just that fact and go out for dinner and enjoy. After that, we both, my husband and I, would look at the report card. And, okay, this mark seems a little low. Any reason why? And very often the kids would say, no, I think it was my fault. I was a little overconfident and thought I could do this exam without studying for it. Oh, fabulous. So you know where you went wrong. I'm thrilled with that. Give them the chance to know where they went wrong. If you are constantly telling them you are wrong, don't do this, don't do that. If your constant reply to anything that they ask you is no, the child begins to feel completely unheard, completely unwanted, completely unimportant. Whether at home or in school, every single child must feel heard, respected, and important. No, teachers, you cannot give me the excuse that we have 60 students in our class. If you have 60 students in your class, you have to work that much harder to ensure that every child is heard, every child feels wanted, and every child feels respected. When children are not heard, not respected, they begin to get aggressive. As they get into teenage years, their aggression keeps coming out. Remember, an aggressive child is a leader. A stubborn child is a leader. An aggressive child is a leader who has never been given the opportunity to express their leadership strength. Now, when a child becomes aggressive, that's the time you've already lost the battle with the child. An aggressive child needs therapy. An aggressive child needs counseling. Parents, please do not think that if you send your child for therapy or counseling, there is something wrong with your child. There is nothing wrong with your child. Your child just needs professional help, which you are not able to give. If your child has, let us say, asthma, would you not take your child to a doctor because your child needs professional help, which you are not able to provide? It's the same here. Don't wait till the child is a 30-year-old man today and is beating up his mother and father. Why? Because when he was doing it at 14, at 15, at 16, the parents not only did not give him the help that the child needed, but the parents kept quiet and pretended to everyone that nothing was wrong. If your child needs help, go for that help. And teachers, when you know that a child is going for therapy, is going for counseling, is going for remedial work, you do not have the right to demean that child. It's because teachers demean a child in school that parents begin to believe there is something wrong with my child and, oh my God, I have to take him to a therapist. Teachers and parents, you are on the same team. You are on team child. You are not on a different team. And till as long as parents and teachers are not on the same team, our children are going to bear the brunt. And while talking about team child, it's not only two people on team child. It's mother, it's father, it's all the teachers, it's the entire management, it's the entire family, and it also brings in the child. Parents, it's not you versus the child. Teachers, it's not you versus the child. Please understand this. The child is not out to get you. The child is not out to make an ass of you. Why do you feel so persecuted? Why do you feel so victimized? It's your inner angst that you are then burdening the child with. It is time that schools change their environment. I mentioned to you, if you missed it, I'm going to mention it again. Discipline is a way, a positive way of teaching a child a lesson in something the child doesn't know. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not hitting. Discipline is not shouting. In fact, the world over today, every therapist, every school counselor, every child therapist is only advocating positive disciplining, which means don't pay attention to the negative pattern. Pay attention to the positive patterns that the child has. The more you praise those, the child will want to be better and better. Because remember, like you and I, the child wants attention. The child wants praise. It's when the child doesn't get attention, it's when the child doesn't get praise, that the child throws a tantrum, that the child gets into negative peer pressure, and the child gets aggressive. It's up to you and I. Now let's move into, no, but before that, to combat peer pressure, guys, I must not forget to say this. You see, here we are telling the child, don't follow what your friends are doing. But at home, we are giving the child a completely different message. At school, we are giving the child a completely different message. And what is that message? You do what I say. You do what we do. Which child is given the respectful permission not to conform? All my students knew. I would tell them, if you are hungry and you were too busy playing in the break and you would like to eat your sandwich, open up your box and eat. It doesn't make a difference that I am teaching. You are still paying attention to me. I don't care if you are eating. You see, when a teacher's ego is not fragile, these silly things will not matter. I used to get constantly amazed when someone would come into the office, either mine or the principal's office, and say, he was drinking water in class. And I'm like, yeah, he was thirsty. You see, it becomes a bad thing because you make it bad. Actually, the truth is the child was eating, or the child was thirsty and was drinking water. Why must you, as an adult, where you should be actually more mature, why are you behaving like a child? You demand that the child should conform, but you also demand that they should not be influenced by others. It doesn't happen. You can't have both things. You either have a child who you have trained, taught, given permission to be independent, or you have a child who is going to look at those so-called negative peer pressure and go along with it. Every student in my class was told, I give you full permission to put your head down if on a particular day you do not feel like studying. But you have to do it in my class. You can't do it in someone else's class because I can't take responsibility for how that teacher will react. Or if you do not even wish to put your head down and you would like to go and sit in the library, be my guest. Be my guest. Go sit in the library. But no going and playing something or peeping into another class. Go and sit in the library, read a book. You can come back to me later and ask me, Miss, what was done in class today? Now, when you give that kind of respect to a child, right? The child knows what responsibilities are being put upon that child. Do you know, very, very often, I would set a test and walk out of the class to do some other work. And I would tell them, these are the questions to be answered. If you have opened a book for a particular answer, if you have asked a friend for a particular answer, against that answer, just write, Miss, please don't correct this. Because why should I correct something and waste my time if it's already, if I know the answer is right? You've already copied from the book. I was very proud of every single student over the years, over the batches, who would not open their book. Why? Because I trusted them, because I respected them, because I gave them the responsibility of doing what they believe is right. When we impose ourselves on children, they will rebel, they will be angry, because we are pushing ourselves onto them and they are carrying a 100-ton burden on their shoulders. There will be very, very few times when you will have to put your foot down and say no. Those are critical moments. Very recently, someone messaged me to say, Elle, a client of mine, I'm so disturbed right now, Elle. My child would have been part of this tragedy, but I put my foot down, even though the child was very angry with me. But I put my foot down and said, no. But I'm still shocked, Elle. What if I had said yes? And I told her, I said, don't go into that area. Give yourself a pat on the back. Honor yourself for having been a parent. You are not your child's friend. Being friendly with your child is not the same thing as being your child's friend. You are the child's parent. And there are a few instances when you have to put your foot down. Please note, I'm using the word few. my son would have a constant battle with his father. And I would stay out of it. That this is between father and son. Although my husband and I were on the same page, in silence, without the child knowing. I am 17, you're not letting me drive. All my friends are driving. All my friends, their parents are teaching them how to drive. You are not letting, every day this would be the conversation. And my husband would just say, the answer is no. I know this is not good for you. Why is it not good for me? Why do you two always have to say no to us? No answer. Selective ignoring. One day, he returns home, shaken, goes to his dad, gives him a hug, and says, Dad, thank you. Thank you for not listening to me. Thank you for not letting me drive. Someone that he knew had taken the car because the parents had allowed him to learn driving with the driver, even though he was not of age, had crashed into someone, had killed that person. This boy had the responsibility and maturity, because we've always made our children independent, to come and say, I'm sorry for all the times I was rude to you about this, but thank you, Dad, for not doing it. Guys, this is when you know you've done a good job. So what if every day he was screaming? So what if they say things like, oh, you are so old-fashioned? Okay, does it make a difference? What difference? One mother was complaining to me that her 12-year-old girl will scream at her and say, I absolutely hate you. And this mother was crying. And I look at her and say, don't you know that that's not true? She's only saying that because she's angry. Why don't you sit down with her and in fact talk about what is angering her, instead of going into this, oh, poor me, my daughter hates me. Of course your daughter doesn't hate you. She's just venting. We have to be adults. We can't allow ourselves to be children. Because if it's a child trying to discipline a child, then it's the blind leading the blind. When we are talking of angry children, I'm repeating this again. Anger comes from acute fear. Anger comes from acute sadness. And anger comes from acute shame or guilt. If you have an angry child on your hands, you have to talk with the child and find out what is the child going through. Is the child being bullied? Is the child receiving horrible messages from school students, school friends? Is the child being made to feel ashamed of something? Is the child very, very scared? Is the child very sad? You know, because we don't give our children the opportunity to grow up in a normal way that every child would grow up, they don't confide in us. So every child at the age of 15, 16, 17 is going to have their crushes, guys. I like him, she likes me, and all of this. Why would you be so perturbed? Why would you not, in fact, have a chat with your child about that? My kids have discussed all their so-called boyfriends and girlfriends with us. Yes, even at that time when they were in standard 10. You see, what happens is that standard 10, that standard 9 romance may not last. Most times it don't. And what happens then? The child is very, very, very sad. Who do they turn to? They don't know who to turn to. And sometimes friends are not enough. if they had one adult who they could turn to and cry and say, I just want to be held, that sadness would be expressed. But when it's not expressed, it then turns into frustration, it then turns into anger. So if you would talk to your child, if you would listen to your child, you would know whether there is bullying going on. Bullying from peers or bullying from a teacher. Don't forget, teachers can be very harsh bullies. Of course, they will hide that under the mask of, I am a teacher. Please, let's say that word again. All the teachers who are present here. I am a teacher, which means I am given the responsibility, the sacred task of teaching. I have not been given the permission to bully. I have not been given the permission to make a child feel small. I have not been given the permission to take away a child's self-esteem. And if that is happening to your child, you would know as a parent, if you would talk, if you would listen. And when you get to know of it, parents, do not keep quiet. Do not keep quiet. Approach the teacher, approach the management. If you find that the teacher or the management is doing nothing about it, I am 100% with the government of India on this. Go and report it to the education department. You have been given the right to do that. Why are you keeping quiet when injustices are happening to your child? When you have the opportunity, when the government of India has said, come to us, what are you scared of? What are you scared of? You have the ability to be there for your child, and the school and the teacher and the management cannot do anything. Stand up for your child. Stand up for wrong. It is a very important lesson to give your child. Not to take injustice lying down, but you don't have to do it aggressively. Let your child be with you so that your child can learn how to talk in an assertive manner, but not to bow down to injustice. Parents and teachers, let us pick our battles. When we say no to everything, the child begins to rebel. Pick your battles. Is this important enough to really fight over with your teenager? Is that really important? So you will tell me, but L, he's not studying. He's going to fail. And L turns around and tells you, so let him fail. So, okay, maybe he'll repeat 1 year. Don't look at it as one wasted year. I think it's a fabulous lesson for the child. That failure will teach the child a lot of responsibility. But you are standing in the way by saying you will sit and study and you will do this and you will not do that and you will not go out with your friends. That child is sitting there with the book, but nothing, not a word is going in. So come on, as parents, as teachers, why are we ruling our child's lives by those horrible marks? Is our child not more important to us than the mark? What is it? That 92, that 98 at ICSE is more important to you than whether your child is happy or not? I would rather have my child have 60 but be a joyous, responsible, happy, positive human being. Because as they grow up in life, no one is asking for that damned mark sheet. They are asking that child, who are you? What kind of a human being are you? Let's shift our focus also, guys, as adults, both teachers and parents. understand that an emotionally withdrawn child is a very disturbed child. Many times, this is the reason, along with anger and aggression, very often, emotional withdrawal is where the child is sent to me, or the child comes with the parent. When a child emotionally distances himself or herself from you, alarm bells must go off in your head as both a teacher and a parent. Guys, never leave a very angry child alone. Never say, go to your room and shut the door. Oh my God, please don't do that, because in the heat of the moment, that anger can stew and make the child do something very harmful. That's when the child starts cutting himself. That's when the child resorts to actions that are then very tragic. Emotional withdrawal is the same. When a child emotionally withdraws from you, and if you are not able to get through, this is the time for professional help. Why is the child emotionally withdrawing? The child might be bullied at school. The child might have some burden the child is not able to share. The child might have erred in some way, might have done something wrong, and now is feeling so guilty and so ashamed and so scared that I will be found out. There could be a million reasons for emotional withdrawal. One of the reasons for emotional withdrawal is deep anger. And this is called oppositional withdrawal. I am angry with you. I will not give you my love. I will not give you my attention. I'm not going to talk to you. Oppositional anger is very often, guys, a learned behavior. When one of the parents behaves like this. I have a very close friend of mine who will talk with deep regret to date, even though she is such an amazing mother to her two teenagers. She will talk with deep regret about the cold treatment her mother would give her when the mother was angry. This is emotional withdrawal, which is oppositional anger. Fortunately, my friend did not take up this behavior pattern. But very often, oppositional anger is a learned behavior. So you have to look into that. If your child is angry with you, please stop justifying your actions. Please don't try and look good. If there is something you've done wrong, say, I'm sorry. Ask your child, what is it that I have done which has made you angry? What can I do to make it better? Your child may not want to talk to you. I tell my clients, write a letter, write an email, write a message, and continue writing till you get the response you are seeking for. Of course, the child will not give you the response right at the beginning. The child is angry. But remember, a very angry child is a child that's feeling very unloved. I remember once my mother telling me, in the days when I was a teenager and a very angry teenager, Nina, you make it so difficult for anyone to love you. You are always pushing people away. And yes, I was doing that. I was emotionally withdrawing from people. I was pushing them away, because actually what I was telling them is, without words, through this all, I'm very mixed up. I'm very lost. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. I don't know what to do. I need you to be there, even though I'm pushing you away. I need you to love me at the time when I am the most hateful. A child has the right to be a child. Don't be so fragile in your emotions. Don't be so fragile in your ego. So if your child is emotionally withdrawing, guys, talk less and listen more. I have found a little trick that I give to my clients that works. I tell them, always be alert for these opportunities. You may be sitting with a friend and chatting, and your very angry daughter walks out of her room and goes into the kitchen. Take that opportunity quickly to say something really nice about her, about how much you love her, about how well she is doing at dance class, that you couldn't believe on stage that she was so proficient in her skill. Make the child overhear you, because the child is angry, doesn't want to talk to you right now. So the child needs to overhear you say things that are positive, things that are full of praise, things that are full of love. Somewhere, the hard shell of anger will very gently start cracking. So don't ignore an emotionally withdrawn child. Keep reaching out. Keep reaching out. An emotionally withdrawn child turns into an adult who is unable to sustain any relationships. So reach out to your child and give the child the professional help the child needs. And that brings me to the so-called good child. It's a myth. It is a myth. There is no good child. There never has been. There never shall be. There are successful children. There are successful adults. There is no good child. In fact, and here you might get very, very perturbed by what I'm going to say. If your child is very, very good, constantly gets the great marks, constantly wins the prizes, is never rude with anyone, is very, very obedient. Guys, alarm bells should ring very loudly. What is wrong with my child? Why is my child so passively aggressive? This is known as passive aggression, where it's not an open aggression, it's lying within. The child appears to conform to everything. Give the child an opportunity to be away from you, an opportunity to be away from the structure, and your child will go astray. I have had this repeatedly over and over and over again. The parent comes to me and cries, I don't know what has happened. Perfect child. He topped the ICSE, did fabulously at the HSC, has never had a bad remark, has always been so good, so respectful to all adults. He goes abroad to study and he's become a vagrant. He is now on drugs. He has dropped out of college. This is a passive-aggressive child. Please do not want your child to be a good child. There is no good child. Celebrate your child's leadership. That's why he's stubborn. That's why he's not listening to you. So instead of making decisions for a stubborn child, why don't you, as an adult, train your child how to make decisions on his own? Don't you think all these life skills are more important than that silly history and geography and math and science? What is the point of acing all these subjects if the child doesn't know how to express their emotions, if the child doesn't know how to communicate, if the child is angry and sad and scared from within? What is the point? What have you attained by spending lakhs of rupees over those silly tuitions, which drives the child bananas? Every day, almost one child or the other would come and tell me, Mrs. Daruwala, I am so tired and sleepy. May I please sleep in your class? And I'd say, go at the back and draw those chairs together and go off to sleep. I'll wake you when the bell rings. One day, live your child's life. Just one day. Then you will know what you are putting them through. A child's happiness is very, very, very dear to me. Why? Because they are gifts from the universe. They are the ones who are going to take our world forward. And you and I are trying to keep them in our yesterday. They've come on this earth in order to make changes, in order to shake you and me up. And what do? We punish them. We tell them to be a clone of who we are, as though we are so damned perfect. Give them the right to follow their soul path. Those marks will not count when your child is cutting themselves. Those marks will not count when your child goes through bulimia. Those marks will not count when your child cannot sustain a happy relationship. What will sustain is the memories of the mother, the father, the teachers, always being there for them. I was a very, very talkative child at school, very talkative. And I was one of those who would distract the others, because in the first 10 minutes, I had already understood the whole chapter, because I was very bright. And remember, a talkative child is a very bright child. My teachers dealt with me in such an amazing way. I remember my 8th standard class teacher. He was also my math teacher. He would see that I had already started talking to someone, and he would bring his the roll call, the admission, each child is present or absent, and he put it on my table and say, collate them, make a list for me. This child has been absent for 4 days, 5 days, make a whole list. Oh, I was so happy. I had this amazing task to do, which took away all my negative energy, and I was not disturbing anyone. And the teacher knew that I had already understood that chapter, and so I was talking, I was distracted. You have to know your child. You have to know your child's triggers. But when you constantly tell your child what you want out of the child, you never give yourself the opportunity to know who your child really is. From today, one thing we've already taken a vow. We are not going to use that word bad or any of its other horrible connotations as a parent or as a child, as a teacher. You're not going to use that word, and if someone else uses that word, you are going to stop them. And 2, from this moment on, whether your child is 2 years old, 10 years old, 20 years old, you are going to make all efforts to know your child. Limit the screen time of your children and limit your own screen time. You can't tell your child, don't watch TV, but you are watching TV. No. Limit the screen time of the child, limit the screen time of the adults in the house. And instead, sit down together for just a chatty evening. Or to say, hey guys, I read this amazing poem I want to share with you. So when I say that, both my husband And my children will all roll up their eyes. Oh my God, mom's going to read out another poem. But they're so sweet. They sit and they hear that poem. And then we have a short discussion on it. Because why? They know mom loves poetry. And why do they respect that? Because when they want to do something they love, we all do that. You see, guys, you have to follow your mouth. Your mouth can't do one thing and your actions do another. Then it doesn't work. And the third thing, learn to say sorry. If as an adult, we learn to say sorry, we learn to say, I don't know, the child will learn the same. So often, because I was the accounts and commerce teacher, children would ask me some question. They'd say, Miss, today's Economic Times has said this. And I'd say, oh, really? I'm sorry, I have no idea. Why don't I find out about this and then get back to you in the next class? But you know, you can say, I don't know, when you are sure of yourself and your ego is not fragile. So know bad, know the child, and say, I'm sorry, and say, I don't know. Thank you, guys. This has been lovely. And I know that all of you are here only because you love your children so much. And this means that all your children from now on will see a completely different adult in you, a different mother, a different father, a different teacher. I'm going to take your questions now. If you could please put them on chat. But remember, guys, no personal questions, please. There is... Okay, so I'm going to read out this question. I'm not going to say the name, but it seems that this 4-year-old, when he throws tantrums, he breaks things, including something like a TV or a pepper shaker. And when his hands are held firmly and we say, no, don't throw, it is not allowed, it hasn't worked. My older son is 8 and maybe it's the rough housing that makes him think it is okay to throw. Oh, very, very, very likely it is. You've already given yourself the answer. Well done. You see, if one aggressive behavior is tolerated, then how do you tell someone else that another kind of aggressive behavior will not be tolerated? Aggression cannot be controlled. When I spoke of selective ignoring, I was not referring to aggression. Aggression must be dealt with immediately. And you have to ensure that you tell them, this is not accepted. But remember what I said, follow your mouth. If this is not accepted by them, it is not accepted from you. It cannot be that the father is allowed to be aggressive, but the son is not. Doesn't work. So you've got your answer, dear, and very well done. Ensure that no aggression is tolerated, not from the older child. Then the younger child will realize aggression doesn't work. Thank you for all your good comments. Thank you very, very much. The more I ignore, the more rebellious they get. Not true. I'm sorry, not true. You see, it's not about just ignoring. Remember what I said. Selective ignoring will not just work. Selective ignoring has to be backed by positive embrace. Never underestimate the importance of physical touch. Positive embrace, positive disciplining, positive reinforcement, positive redirection of energy. All of these positives have to be there for selective ignoring to work. Otherwise, the very fact that you tell me they're getting more rebellious, You are not selectively ignoring. What you're doing is shutting them out. And that's not selective ignoring. I told you, selective ignoring is when you're with the child in the room. The child is not feeling shut out. You're with the child. But you're doing your own thing and you're very, very, very calm. You may say, you know what, you guys continue doing it. I'm going to ignore you. Oof, they've already seen how agitated you are. You have to remain calm. I promise you, selective ignoring works. Some only need a hug, and you are so true, right there. In the current situation, social distancing and all, they do need a hug. They do need to be reassured. Children are very worried whether things will ever go back to normal. The fact is, we don't know what the new normal will be. But sit down. Explain to the child that you are also unaware of what the consequences will be, of what the future will be, but that together you and the child will always be fine. So continue talking about these things. Don't brush these things under the carpet. And of course, give them a hug. How to motivate a teen to follow exercise, meditation, switch word chanting. Please understand, teenagers are at that age where they find all of this as what crap. And why? It's not only teenagers. So I'm going to tell you about my son, who's now almost 25. So in this lockdown period, my refrigerator stopped working for a day or two. And I realized there is no way anyone can come now for God knows how many weeks. So I just started my switch word chanting. And lo and behold, in a day or two, my fridge, not my computer. Did I say computer? I'm sorry. My fridge. My fridge started and is working, touch wood, perfectly. So my son, of course, laughed and said, you know, you, mom, all these things you do, God knows where you get them from. And I laughed along with him. The universe has an amazing way of teaching things. About 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, his computer stopped working. Now he needs his computer because he's working from home. And of course, he came very rattled that his computer was not working. And I said, why don't you leave your computer here and I'll do the switch word chanting for your computer. Now he looked at me like that. Yeah. Otherwise, all of these Apple shops will close down, Mom. And I said, yeah, but leave it here. No big deal. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm sorry, then it doesn't work. I did the switch word chanting. After a week, I told him, why don't you try the computer? You should have seen the look on his face. He couldn't believe it that that computer was working. A few days later, something happened to the screen of his phone. This time, I didn't say, I'll do it for you. I told him, you already know the switch word works. Here it is. Start chanting. I didn't get a no from him this time. That's how you motivate. You do not push it down their throats. It's not needed. And you know what? He may again, after a few months, make fun of me for all of this. So what? Maybe it's not his path. He'll find his path just like I found my path. So yes, I know meditation is lovely and exercise is lovely and switch words work. But you know, you've got to let them find their path and motivate them by doing it yourself, not by preaching about it. Thank you very much for those kind words. Thank you. Oh, locking up children for bad behavior is an absolute no. I've already said that. You do not lock up a child alone. You do not do that. And locking up a very, very young toddler in a room that is dark, it is not discipline, guys. This is cruelty. You are doing this because you are helpless. And if you are helpless as an adult, how can you expect anything positive from your child? You have to be the one who has to be positive. You have to keep yourself up on parenting methods. You have to change. You have to transform. Stop expecting your child to change. The day you change, your child shall change. But you cannot lock up the child. You cannot say, go to your room and till you are less angry. Not at all. Not at all. Please believe me, you're doing something very dangerous. Don't do that. She felt unaccepted, bullied. This is nice. They moved from UK last August. My daughter is 9 years old, talkative, sharp, intelligent, but is unaccepted by her friends in these 3 years and continues to be bullied at the slightest of rejection. Again, a very sad but constant situation in schools. The parents should be on board with the teachers with something like this. Another thing teachers must do is teachers must not show their bias or their prejudice. You see what happens when there is a so-called good child, the teachers continually praise that child. The teacher will give that child responsibility. That child is made monitor. That child, blah, blah, blah. That child can do no wrong. But do you know what you're doing as a teacher? You are ensuring that all the other students begin to dislike that one child because you are paying attention to that child and ignoring the others. That's why I said whether 6 or 60 in your class, you pay attention to all, you respect all, you love all. And for something like this where she is being bullied, the parents and the teachers have to be on board on the same page. And then it's not about telling the children or shouting at them, why are you bullying her? No, 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 no. That's what I said. Teaching has to be a creative exercise. The teacher has to find a way to ensure that she's part of a team. Make teams, have teamwork, have projects while the teacher is present, not while they are alone. Slowly and gently and gradually, this child will be accepted. My 6-year-old is asking for a tab and a mobile, that his friend has it, so why not we? We said it's not allowed in our family. Wrong answer. Don't give that tab, don't give the mobile. I agree with you. But don't say it's not allowed in our family. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? What does the child say? It's not allowed in our family? What does that mean? No, you explain to the child why you don't want the child to have the tab, why you don't want to let the child have the mobile. And yes, your child is not going to listen to you the first time. Again, repeat it. Every time he tells you, give him an answer. Telling him because mom says so, because dad says so, because our family doesn't do it. Wrong answer. It doesn't cut it. Doesn't cut it with your child, doesn't cut it with me. What was the switch word? For the fridge and the computer, the switch word was stretch dynamic Tesla 444. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you very, very much. May you all raise and teach happy, radiant, dynamic children. May their souls shine forth under your care. Remember, that is the goal of a parent. That is the goal of a teacher, that their soul must shine forth under your care. If you have that as your goal, your parenting will be different. Your teaching will be different. God bless you. And love all of you and love all your children. Thank you all.